Like I said before, my name's Jono. Before I start though, I just want to acknowledge that we're on Aboriginal land, the land of the Wurundjeri people, which was never ceded, and our family, we also live on Wurundjeri country as well, about 35 minutes without traffic to get here, and about 45 minutes plus if there is traffic to get over here. But we're over on Wurundjeri country out on the Kororoit Creek, which is, and our neighbourhood's between what's now known as Caroline Springs and Melton, out on the creek there. That's where we are. And so I just want to pay my respects to all Aboriginal people, and particularly the Wurundjeri elders, past and present. I'm here with my lovely wife, Katie. We've been together for 17 years. Whew. I had to just stop and think for a minute. I always get that wrong, because I think, how long have we been married for? How long have we been together for? And then the numbers are somewhat similar, and there's a number of them nowadays. But 17 years we've been together, and we've got our two girls who are with us, our 12-year-old Isabel and our nearly 10-year-old Lucy. Katie, she works in a early learning centre in our neighbourhood. She works in the kinder rooms there, just a couple of blocks from home. And the kids go to the local primary school, which is just a couple of blocks from home as well. And our neighbourhood there on the Kororoit Creek is the suburb's called Aintree, and the development is called Woodley. And like I was saying before, we moved down there in 2018 to do some work with the Victorian Baptists. Sorry, not Church of Christ. It was Baptist. That's been my background, it was to focus on some things which they call placemaking, but effectively it's community development, community engagement, with a particular, I guess, to be honest, I got a bit of a blank sheet of paper, and they said, here you go, can you do something, maybe write your own job description and just figure it out as you go. And so that's fine, that works well for me to do that. And I had a particular interest in social enterprise, right? So which is business with a social good, so often not non-profit businesses. And so we were sort of exploring a bunch of that. So over the last 6 years, I've done a bunch of different work, mostly around community development, community engagement. We ran a cafe for 3 years. 2 of those were in COVID. Don't run cafes, particularly through COVID. It's not great, it's not fun, but we shut that down at the beginning of the year. And over those 6 years, I've developed what is a environmental not-for-profit. So it's, to put it in faith language, it's about creation care. And it's about trying to empower the neighbourhood, particularly in a new housing development where we've got country that's been grasslands for thousands upon thousands of years, which is now literally being turned upside down and paved with roads and houses that are massive, and your McMansions going on 500 square metre blocks with concrete and artificial grass and all the great things that come with suburban housing developments, and all the great things that are destroying the environment. And so as a follower of Jesus, that's something I'm really passionate about, is about how Christians need to be on the forefront of tackling climate change, and Christians need to be on the forefront of helping communities live more sustainably. And so this is what our non-profit is about. And so particularly we do some things around community education and awareness. So I do lots of stuff in schools, but we don't want to just tell people about the problems and what they can do. We want to actually give people solutions that they can engage with. So this year we will have planted about 9,000 trees in our neighbourhood. By the time we get to, so I've got a tree planting next Sunday and the Sunday afterwards, and that should get to us about 9,000 plants for this year. And we do some habitat cleanup in some of our wetland areas, and we're trying to engage with as many diverse people as possible to really make a difference, I guess, in that space. And then I also run a landscaping social enterprise, which is focusing on food growing. So that's kind of my interest and what I'm good at. So we build veggie gardens, built a few not far from here actually, in people's backyards, but then we also build school gardens. I run a school kitchen garden network amongst kitchen garden teachers to resource them and upskill them. do garden consults, urban farming consults, a whole range of different things around food growing and native gardens. And so on any given day, I'm usually not wearing this. I'm usually in high vis, and could be landscaping a new veggie garden, or running a community tree planting event, or teaching an environmental workshop, or doing something like that. And then our family also, we're kind of experimenting in the faith and church space a little bit as well, with a range of success and failure with all of that, as it comes with starting something new and experimenting. But we've started what the Baptists call a micro church. I don't know what Church of Christ people call this, but sometimes they're called, actually Sam used to do something in New South Wales, they called them simple churches. So micro churches, simple churches, missional communities, dinner churches, there's a whole lot of different names. And we call ourselves Table Church, and we gather together on a Friday night usually, and typically we have like a bit of a liturgy that we start at the beginning of the meal, which includes the Eucharist, includes communion, have an acknowledgement of country, we light the Christ candle in the centre of the table, and then it's kind of whatever we're eating. So on Friday night we're having tacos, so we just grab some like soft shell tacos, and that's the bread for communion, and whatever it is that you're drinking that night, that's your glass for the wine, which could be wine, but it could be something completely different. It's not wine for the children, and so it's just whatever you've got, and we go through this liturgy to sort of centre and ground our meal around the Eucharist that way. And then we eat together, we chat over the table, and then we often move into a deeper conversation or prayer practice or something or other off to the side. Usually the kids are just jumping on the trampoline or doing something or other, or sometimes they join us. We sort of try and make things as accessible as possible for all ages and all kinds of people on any kind of faith journey that they might be on. But then sometimes we'll just invite our neighbours over to the park, and we'll order pizza from the local shop, or we might have a fire pit night in our backyard and just invite whoever to come around. And then we don't have a formal Eucharist or liturgy or anything that goes on there. But for us, cracking open a beer or handing out slices of pizza while at the park or around the fire pit is just as much a spiritual practice for us as when we're lighting the Christ candle and praying a liturgy. We feel that for us, we want to bring people together to experience the love of God through hospitality and make that as accessible as possible for as many people as possible. So that's the context, I guess, that I'm coming to you from this morning. So when I'm here to talk about serving or whatever, that's kind of the context that I'm coming to you from. And I guess, so what I want to explore then this morning is this question. What can the people of God do when they choose to live for the common good of all? What would it look like, and what can the people of God do when they look beyond potentially the more typical or traditional ways of being and serving as the church and begin to imagine what it might be like to work for the common good of everyone that is around them? There's a few passages, there's heaps of passages actually that speak about service, and I'm not going to go through the one that was read in the Bible reading in a exegetical way. There's a lot of other stuff in it that's not about serving in that passage, which is a great passage to read and to dive into. But there's some other passages that are around service. So I'm going to read a couple to you to give you a bit of a fuller context. So Mark 10, if you've been around church for a while, chances are you probably have heard some of these before. But in Mark 10, 42 to 45, it says, Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them, but not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. And then Philippians 2, this is a really well-known passage if you've been around church for a while. Philippians 2 verses 3 to 8 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." Now, I don't know if you do this next bit or not, or if you feel uncomfortable with it, and I apologise in advance if you feel uncomfortable. I just want you to talk to somebody next to you just for 30 seconds, or someone near to you, or if there's no one near to you, or if you're at home and you don't have someone nearby that you can talk to, throw it in the chat, or just think about it yourself, whatever you're more comfortable doing. But if you want to talk to someone next to you, just of what do you think about when you hear the words service or serve or servant, particularly in a Christian context? What do you think Christian servanthood or Christian service is? What comes to mind? Do you want to just talk to someone next to you about that for 30 seconds, or just think about it in your own head, and then I'll get some responses from you. Go. Got about 20 seconds left. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up. Sorry, my last 10 seconds was rather quick, wasn't it? Does somebody want to share what you talked about? If you're on the screen, sorry if you're at home, sorry if I can't see where I'm looking at to know if you're talking or not. Throw it in the chat, and hopefully someone will read it if I haven't seen it. I apologise. Someone who does good, yeah. Okay, that's great. Other people? Yes, say it. There you go. Yep. Yeah. Well, potentially someone who's doing good. Doing something that's for somebody else, for others, that's not of benefit to you. Yep. No, yep. Good. So, yep. Giving, humble, and available. Did I get those? Yep. Yeah, good. You know, I did a quick Google search, because that's what you do these days, don't you? You throw things into Google, or you ask Siri or something like that about what it means to serve in a Christian context. And then I read a few blog articles and a few bits and pieces, and I grabbed a few books off my shelf in my office, and skipped to the index and found the word servant or service, and flicked over to that and had a quick read. And it's interesting, a lot of what I found, particularly on Google, the very first things that sort of came up were people talking about what it means to serve God. Right? How do you, that service is about serving God. And in particular, they're talking about, obedience to God's commands, or doing what God wants you to do, or when God asks you to do something, to follow that, to serve God in some capacity. And then some of those articles moved on to talk about service or servanthood in terms of Christian ministry. So have you heard the phrase, someone saying, I serve God in Christian ministry, or I serve God as a pastor, or something like that? And sometimes it's funny, because there we're talking about leadership, and there's phrases around servant leadership, And sometimes we'll have people and they'll say that they're serving as a leader or they're serving as a pastor, whether or not their actual service looks anything like a servant or not. Right? They could be an absolute tyrant, of a dictator in leadership. Oh, but I'm serving as a pastor. Yes. But we just use that as kind of a phrase, whether or not it's actually servanthood or not, right? And then also the next things were sort of about particularly the ideas of serving the less fortunate. That often came up. Serving people in need or doing things that help others, particularly people who might feel see that they're less fortunate than ourselves. But I think, unfortunately, the idea of Christian service often has a bit of a colonial attitude to it. And I think it kind of stems from a bit of Western Christianity's colonial roots in Australia, where there's this mentality that I have something to give to you, right? That I am the servant and you are the recipient of my service. I have something to give to you. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about serving people who are less fortunate or serving in Christian ministry or even serving it as a pastor. There's this attitude that says, I have something that you need, and thank God you're here. I am here to serve you because I've got the thing that you need. And it's quite ironic because then we're talking about serving and we're reading passages like the Philippians passage, which is clearly about humility. And I think often this attitude is actually more of a subtle undercurrent that exists, or it exists internally within us, because let's be honest, if someone's kind of big noting themselves as I'm the servant and you're the recipient of my service, we can see that a mile off usually. Like most people can, and it's pretty repulsive. And we tend to try and reject it, right? And so I don't think that it's often big and overt. It's often just a subtle undercurrent that says, I'm the servant and you're the recipient of my service. Do you follow? You see, if you're unable to serve people without also imagining that the people you are serving are absolutely capable of serving you, then you've missed the point. Right? If you can't imagine people looking at you as you serve others and thinking you're just part of the same group and lumping you in with the people that you're serving as if you're no different, if that sort of goes, oh, no, I don't want that. No, I don't want to put in the same group as the people I'm serving. I'm different. I'm the servant. I'm serving them. I want to be separate in some capacity. If that's what's happening to you as you're serving, then I think you've missed the point. If you feel the need to remain separate or be distinguished from them as the one who serves and they are the ones being served, then you've missed it. It's not Christ-like service. And like I said, I don't think this is typically overt, because usually we can see that overt superiority and we're repulsed by it as well. But I find if you're like me, it's a subtle undercurrent that exists inside you, and sometimes it bubbles to the surface and you go, oh, where did that even come from? Where did that feeling even come from? But it's this subtle undercurrent which bubbles up from deep within me which says, hey, Jono, you're doing the right thing, because we're not going to say it out loud or anything, but we know that they need you. We both know that they truly need your help, and what you're doing is what is good for them. And look, if they were to offer something to you and you were to accept their service in some way, well, that's good. Do that, because it makes them feel better about the fact that they need you. Right? It's just this little thing that just bubbles up sometimes. But what Jesus does in the John passage when he washes the disciples' feet And what Jesus says in the Mark passage by giving himself the title Son of Man and then describing himself as the suffering servant who will die, friends, this is revolutionary stuff. What Paul understood when he wrote the Philippians passage is this: following in the way of Jesus means you need to empty yourself of power. Right? Jesus says, you call me Lord and teacher, and rightly so, because that is who I am. Right? He knows that he has a title, but then, as Paul writes, he doesn't consider equality with God. Even though he is equal to God, he does not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. No, he gives up. He empties himself of the power. Even though he has the title, he empties himself of the status that comes with that title. Yeah? Following in the way of Jesus means we need to empty ourselves of power, removing any unnecessary titles, removing ourselves of any status, and like Jesus, making ourselves low. Jesus, the King, the Son of Man, God incarnate, removes this power, empties himself of status, and he incarnates. Says that he, being found in appearance as a man, he humbles himself. He incarnates. He becomes one of us, indistinguishable from the ones that he serves. Does this make sense? You see, friends, if you truly want to become a servant like Jesus, it absolutely starts with emptying yourself of power, removing yourself from the positions of power, removing any status or titles that would separate you from others. Because then, and really only then, when you can remove yourself from the positions of power and empty yourself from any status that you would otherwise hold, that's when it enables you to work alongside others. Not doing things for others, working alongside. That's what leadership looks like, not leading from the front, but from the side and from behind. See, when we empty ourselves from power, we can truly come alongside others and begin equipping and empowering and amplifying them. And that's when we can work together for the common good. Now, friends, I tell you this, not as someone who has worked it out. Okay? Anyone interested in personality types? One, good. So I really am, because my personality type is something that likes to get below the surface and see the connections and try and work things out and nut things out and, oh, why does that happen? Why does this do that? Oh, I'm interested in that. Why did that person think that or say that? Oh, it's this connection, that. I love making connections, right? And that's because if you're into personality types and you know the Myers-Briggs personality types, I'm an INTP. If that means nothing to you, then so be it. But you can talk to me later if you want to. That's introvert, believe it or not, I'm a fairly big introvert. Introvert, intuitive, thinking and perceiving, INTP. If you're not into Myers-Briggs, but you do know personality types and you know the Enneagram, I'm Enneagram type 5, which is known as the investigator. Okay, that's what I'm like. Now, I tell you this because as an Enneagram type 5, my basic fear is to be helpless, useless, or incapable. Right? That's my basic fear. To be helpless, useless, or incapable. Or there's a great article, I think the Washington Post put it out, I can't remember. It's probably about 15 years old now. But they put out this article about Myers-Briggs personality types, and they went through every single Myers-Briggs personality type, it's about 24 of them, and they wrote a sentence or two about what would be hell for that personality type? Like, what's the worst possible situation that they could be in? It was like hell for Myers-Briggs types. And so for an INTP, the worst thing that could possibly happen to me, what would be hell for a personality like me, is when everything has gone wrong and it's all my fault, right? That's like the worst thing, because, you see, I hate it when people are angry at me, or particularly when they're cranky at me because they think that I'm incompetent in some way. I hate it when people blame me for a mistake that I've made, or worse, when I know that I have made the mistake and they have every right to blame me for it, right? I just can't stand that. And so the flip side of this for my personality is that therefore I can start to feed off people when they give me praise, when they tell me that I'm competent, when they tell me that they're acknowledging my hard work, or they're recognizing what I'm doing as being good. And so I find that I love coming up with ideas and implementing them, because I'm the only one who truly knows how to implement my own ideas, right? So I kind of have to implement these things that I've come up with. And so the perk of being able to do that in my, like, what kind of feeds me sometimes, this is not a good thing about my personality, right? What can feed me is people praising me for my ideas and how I've implemented them. And you kind of feel quite good about that. You kind of really like that. Now, most people wouldn't even know that's going on for me, because I'm an introvert. And so it's all happening internal. It's all in the head and down here. And introverts are pretty good at masking themselves. And so that's me. So most people wouldn't even know that that's happening. But what it means is that emptying myself from positions of power and removing status and then amplifying others is not something I'm naturally really good at. Because I like doing the things myself, and usually I think I know how to implement these things better than other people. That's just what my personality type does. And so removing status and amplifying others is not something I'm naturally good at, but when I can consciously become aware of my shortcomings that naturally exist in who I am as a person, and then when I can work so that what I do enables me to truly amplify others, then I can truly work alongside other people. See, recognizing some of those shortcomings is what truly enables me to be able to work for the common good of people around me. Now, I don't think the stuff I'm about to tell you is rocket science. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how I've done this in my own work and what it's like for our table church. It's not going to blow your mind, okay? Because it's not rocket science, folks. It's not. It's pretty simple and ordinary stuff. In my role, which has been mostly in community development and community engagement work, it's community development 101 to empower and equip other people. Right? That's the basic premise of community development. And particularly early on, when we'd first moved into our neighbourhood and been working for 6 months or 12 months or so in this kind of community development role, I used to get phone calls all the time from people, like a few a week, from people who might have had an idea or had a project or had something, some kind of thought of something they wanted to do, and they just didn't know how to get it off the ground. And usually the conversation would go something along the lines of, hey, Jono, I was speaking to so-and-so, and they said, if I had an idea and I didn't know what to do with it, that I should talk to you, because you help people get things started. And so over those first couple of years, I helped some people start the cricket club and the tennis club, a multicultural association, a table tennis club, volleyball, a play group, some people doing some Punjabi cultural events, all kinds of things and all kinds of little things as well. But really, I did very little. I didn't do much at all. Really, a lot of what I was doing was empowering people who already had the idea and giving them the confidence to actually say, no, you've got this. You think you need me? You actually don't need me. I'll help you in a little way. And usually it was things with language. We've got about 70 different languages in our school alone. And so usually it was language stuff, trying to help them process things of what things actually mean when they have a letter from council or they're reading a grant application or something like that. So it was usually things around language or helping them to get connected with council or navigating council processes or finding grants or incorporating how to run meetings, how to take minutes, governance, those sorts of things of clubs. And then it was kind of like, you guys got this. You can do that. You ring me if you need me, right? If you've got a question, but I'd usually just try and just get them going, push it back on them. You've got this. You can do this. And what's great is the cricket club, for instance, they've now got 300 members. They've got women's teams, girls' teams, boys' teams, men's teams, 15 premierships in 4 years, and I've had nothing to do with any of them, right? Like I helped them in the initial stage to incorporate, but they have done everything to get to that point. The Multicultural Club, they recently ran a festival in our neighbourhood that had a few thousand people at it. Again, I had nothing to do with it. Right? Haven't had anything to do with them for 3 years. Right? Because they are capable of doing this. They don't need me. They can do this. Our table church is only a small group of people, but we've all decided to try and live and work in the neighbourhood as much as possible. And we're pretty lucky because we've got a couple of teachers who can work in the local schools. Katie, my wife, she's an early childhood educator and she's got a job a couple of blocks from home. I run out the non-profit that I run, which a lot of our work's based locally as well. And so we've tried to stay local as much as possible. But in addition to that, we've always tried to just get involved in what other people are already doing. And so, you know, Jen, who's in our table church, Jen and I volunteered on school council. Dave's on the committee for the tennis club. And it's at these kinds of places that we discover what's important to our neighbours. It's at these kinds of places that we can have conversations and truly hear what matters most to people, what they are passionate about. And then we can discover together what it is, for, how we can work for our common good. And so like I said earlier, we've planted more than 10,000 trees in our neighbourhood, probably about 15 or 16,000 over 5 years together. We've joined with people just this year alone. We've pulled about 20 cubic metres of rubbish out of the local wetland area, joining with people in the neighbourhood. We've assisted with fundraisers at the school. We've supported neighbours who are struggling, and we've provided meals and conversation. We unfortunately had to support one neighbour through a domestic violence situation and divorce. We've supported mates with family situations or illnesses, a whole range of different things. But the key thing that we've been able to do, that we focus on as Table Church, is simply to be present. Simply to be present in our neighbourhood. And I think that is the key to Christ-like service. To be present. It's not to run a program. It's not to create an event. It's not to design something where you're going to need a whole lot of volunteers in order to get it off the ground. If you don't have the volunteers, it's never going to happen. No. You, whoever you are, right where you are, in whatever large circles you're in or small circles you're in, just be present. Just be present with people. You see, Paul Sparks and Tim Sorens, they wrote a book called The New Parish, and they talk about faithful presence. Faithful presence. And it's simply being present in your neighbourhood, listening intently to what people are saying, and prayerfully responding with actions of love. That's it. Simple. Listen intently, prayerfully respond with actions of love. Another author, Hugh Holter, he writes about this same kind of thing, although he's talking about it and he calls it blessing. And he reminds us in a book, The Tangible Kingdom, that biblical blessing or service, it's probably interchangeable, there. We should do this. We should love and serve people with no strings attached. No strings attached. We shouldn't have an ulterior motive when we serve. We shouldn't have a hidden agenda. We shouldn't be doing something so that we get the people that we're serving to do something or be something that they aren't, or attend something that they don't want to attend. We should simply be serving them because we love them. For their good, for the common good. See, a common string that is attached by Christians is that we have a secret mission, a covert operation when we're serving people. And that covert operation is that we're going to share Jesus with them, right? And so, look, hear me out. There is nothing wrong with sharing the good news of Jesus, right? If it's truly good news, then you should share it. But it is not a string to attach to service. And it most certainly is not a hidden string that you should attach to service. If it's a hidden string, there's a word for that. It's called manipulative. Right? It's not... You see, if you've got a hidden string attached where you're going to set a trap and slip in a bit of evangelism, it doesn't look like Jesus, right? You know, if someone says to you, in a place where you're serving, they go, "Hey, why are you doing this? What's your agenda here? You know, do you want something from me? Do I need to do anything with this? Like, why are you doing this? What's going on there?" And if we go, "Oh, no, we're just doing this because we love you," but underneath we've got like a hidden agenda of where we're going to do a bit of bait and switch, like that's manipulative. You see, if we knew that this person was going to reject faith in Jesus or never come to church with us, and if we knew that and therefore we thought, if we knew that, we wouldn't waste our time on them, we would go to someone else, if that's truly how you would respond if you knew, then you've missed the point. You've completely missed the point. It's not honest, and it is manipulative. You see, if you're doing evangelism or something like that, be honest with that agenda. Just be transparent with that agenda, that that's what you're doing, that that's why you're doing it. That's okay. But don't hide it away underneath the guise of service. Just be honest with an agenda you have, and if you don't have that agenda, don't have that agenda, right? Loving your neighbour and seeking their good and seeking the good of the community around them, don't attach any strings to that. Just love, because God is love. And friends, you don't have to feel guilty about not attaching a string. I think that mission and evangelism and service of years gone by in the church has taught people to think that their service of others and that their love of others doesn't count or isn't important if you're not doing evangelism. Friends, it's just wrong. It's just not true. Don't let people make you feel guilty about not attaching a string. Your service of the community and your neighbours, you're loving them with no strings attached. This matters. This is good work. This is kingdom work. Because God is a God who loves. And that is what you are doing. No strings, just love. So you don't have to feel guilty about that. You can be open, honest, transparent, and you love people and serve people simply because you can and because God does. You see, we don't bring God into our communities. He's already here. He's already here well before you. Like, how important do we think we are? Well before you, God is here and at work. We don't need to feel like that God won't be present if we don't do something overtly Christian. God is present, and he's present in your acts of love. Right? God is present there. Instead, we need to be faithfully present, listening to what God is doing and listening intently to our neighbours, working alongside them and asking, well, where is the kingdom of God already at work here? What does that kingdom look like? Where can I see it flourishing? Where are people already longing for justice and righteousness and goodness and peace and love? Because I want to go there, because you know what? God is already present there, because the fruit of the Spirit can be seen there, right? Where are the fruit of the Spirit? And maybe you'll see it in people who do not believe or behave or do things the same way as you, but if they are made in the image of God, friends, should it surprise us that we see the fruit of the Spirit around them? Not at all. So go and join them. You see, people of all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of lifestyles, all kinds of faith traditions and nationalities, they long for kingdom things just like you and I. And so what would it look like to work together with one another for the common good with no strings? How can we join together and seek justice and peace and faithfulness and goodness and kindness and gentleness and love? How can we do that to see those things take hold in our neighbourhood and blossom up and overflow? How can we encourage and build capacity in others in our community so that these kingdom things just permeate our whole world? Because friends, that is what true Christ-like service produces. Just imagine if people would say, those people at Northern Community, they truly love us. Those people at Northern Community, they are present with us. They don't have ulterior motives. They don't have hidden agendas. They truly want what's best for us. Those people, they have integrity, they have transparency, they have great love. Wow, what a witness that would be. Now, I understand that you guys often have a response time afterwards, so I wrote just 3 questions which are going to pop up on the screen behind me for you to think about. And the 3 questions are, where or how do you need to empty yourself from either positions of power or ulterior motives that might separate you from your community? Where or how might you need to empty yourself of those things? But then, how could you use your strengths, your gifts, what you're good at, what you're passionate about? How could you use those things, whether that you think they're big things or just a tiny little thing? Oh, I'm good at maybe having a cup of tea with somebody. Great. That's strength. How could you use that strength, that gift, to work alongside others, from the side and from behind, not in front, to inspire, to equip, to empower, and to amplify them? How could you use your gifts and your strengths to do that? And then the third question is, what might service via a faithful presence look like for you, but also look like for Northern Community? I think you've got some time now just to reflect on that.